Hey class, it is Mrs. Gilling here, and we are just about to do your Unit 3 video assignment about the culture and religions of the Pacific Islands. But before we do, here is the joke of the unit. When is a bear not a bear? Answer: when he doesn't have the right qualifications. Get it? Koala bear, hey! Did you know that koala bears eat a lot of eucalyptus leaves, and that's why they're sleepy all the time? Fun fact for you. So look, you're already starting off with so much new information. I don't know how useful that information is, but new information. All right, I wanted to start off with koala bear joke because we're going to be talking a little bit about the Pacific Islands, and you can find koala bears over there in Australia. So, another fun fact. But here we go. Let's learn a little bit about the culture and religions and sports, all that fun stuff in the Pacific Islands. So let's start off with culture and religion in Australia. Here's a map of what Australia looks like over there in the ocean on the other side of the world. So let's start with languages. So more than 70% of the people in Australia actually speak English. And then nearly 15% speak native languages. And others speak Greek, Italian, or Mandarin. And that's just because there's some immigration that occurred into those parts. But English is the #1 language that's spoken in Australia. Popular sports include cricket, soccer, and swimming. I've always wanted to try cricket. I think it looks like a super fun sport. Popular foods. Okay, Vegemite. My parents, when I was in the 6th grade, they went to Australia, New Zealand. And I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show Rocket Power. You may if not. It was a cartoon on Nickelodeon in the 90s about kids that like to skateboard and do like super sports like that. Well, in the movie or in the TV show, one of the kids went to Australia and they kept begging people to bring back Vegemite. And there was a little jingle and it went, Vegemite, Vegemite. And so because we watched that show, we thought Vegemite would be delicious. And we begged our parents to bring us back some Vegemite from Australia. And so they did. And when they got back, we got a big old spoonful. We put it in our mouth and then like spit it out, because Vegemite is actually a yeast extract. It was nasty. It was super bitter and salty and gross. But in Australia, it's the bomb. They take it and they put it on their toast and they love it. So there you go. You can take my word for it. You can take their word for it. I thought it was a little bit, but they really, really enjoyed it over there in Australia. They also like things called fairy bread, lamingtons, mini pavlovas, and meat pies. If you want to know a little more about those in your readings, there's some pictures that you can look at. But my parents said the food over there is pretty good, pretty fun stuff. Religion. Australia doesn't have an official religion, but 50% of Australians say they are Christian. 20% say they don't practice any religion at all. And then there's other religions, including Buddhism, Islam, and Hindu. And then the Aboriginal people there, like the very native people, they are very religious and spiritual, and they worship different deities. So a little bit of a mixture there on what people believe in and what they worship. So that's Australia. Let's talk about New Zealand for a little bit. So there up here is your map of New Zealand. There's Australia for a reference point. So the language spoken in New Zealand, 95% of the people actually speak English, and 4% speak Maori. Due to immigration, there is some Chinese, Samoan, and Hindu spoken, but only by a small percentage of the population. Popular sports there are rugby, cricket, and netball. Now, I'd never heard of netball before, so I did some research on it. And netball is a lot like basketball, but they have 7 players on each team. And instead, like in basketball here in the United States, how we know it, any player can like run up and down the court. But in netball, you have specific positions that you play. So you kind of like in football, or I don't know. I've never played football. I watch a lot of football, but I know like in soccer, you can't go past a certain point if you're in certain positions. It's kind of like that with netball. You have to stay in your zone, in your area. You can't leave it. You can't just run up and down the court. But it is a huge sport, I guess, in New Zealand, and it's mostly played by women. Popular foods there are the Maori. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. Maori hangi or hangi. It's meat and vegetable wrapped in leaves and cooked in a deep pit with fire and stones. They also have marmite, which is kind of like their version of Vegemite. They eat a lot of lamb, and they eat lolly cakes. I don't know what a lolly cake is, but I would definitely encourage you to look it up. Religions, over 35% of the population identifies as Christian. A small percentage practices the Maori religion, which is the native people in New Zealand, and then nearly 50% report no religious beliefs. On the note, really quick with rugby and the Maori people, if you know a lot about rugby, you probably know what the haka is. That's that dance that they do. Oftentimes the big rugby team in New Zealand, before every match, they'll do that haka dance. But that came from the Maori people. That's where it originated. So you've probably seen it on different movies and things, but New Zealand is where that really became popular. All right, last but not least, the Pacific Islands. The Pacific Islands is not made up of just one country. It's made up of a whole bunch of different little countries and a bunch of tiny islands. It's full of a lot of cultural infusion. There's a lot of different things going on there. And so it's hard to summarize it in one slide because you can go from one island to another, and things would be very, very different. But they are often grouped together and just called the Pacific Islands because there's so many of them. So as far as languages go, Papua New Guinea has about 700 spoken languages. That just shows how broad these cultures are. Most of them come from the Austronesian family languages, which is Southeast Asia. So a lot of them are like similar, but they have enough differences that they are different languages. But 700, that's insane. I think it would be interesting to go to that country and talk to a bunch of different people and just try to understand what everyone's saying because they could all be speaking such a different dialect. There are Western languages there, such as French, English, and Spanish as well, from people that migrated over to those places. Here's an interesting sports fact for you. I can't include all the sports because, again, there's so many different little countries. But Samoa produces more professional football players per capita than any state in the United States. A young man living in Samoa is 56 times more likely to play in the NFL than a young man from the United States. Isn't that crazy, this tiny country? You're more likely to play in the NFL than if you're somebody growing up in the States. You'll read about this in your text, but it talked about how that culture prepares them almost for the NFL because there's a lot of respect for elders, so you learn how to kind of work as a team and to listen and be respectful. They work hard, so they're strong because they're out building houses and fishing and doing all those chores. But in their free time, it's a pretty impoverished country. They don't have a whole lot of money in their homes, and so they spend their free time playing sports like football, and it just gets them built and ready to go. So yeah, it's super interesting sports fact that in Samoa you're more likely to become an NFL football player than you are if you're from any state in the United States. So kind of cool. So if you want to become a football player, I guess you can move to Samoa, learn their ways, and figure it out. Popular foods in the Pacific Islands: seafood, which makes a lot of sense, right? Because the ocean's all over there. Root vegetables and tropical fruits. The Pacific Islands are known for their large feasts. You know, your luau's and those sorts of things. Lots and lots of parties those ways. So kind of interesting. I would love to go explore a bunch of those different islands. I think it would be fascinating just to spend a couple of weeks in island hop and see all the different cultures all in that small amount of time. I think it'd be awesome. So religion, this is pretty diverse. It's becoming largely Christian, but before that, it was Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. They held many traditional beliefs, such as animism, and that's the belief that everything, including plants, animals, and objects, is inhabited by spirits. There's also evidence that suggests that ancient islanders offered human sacrifices to the gods. So the beliefs that they held back a long time ago, a lot of them don't hold those beliefs anymore. They've changed with the different cultures that have come into the countries. But there are some people that have some of those more traditional beliefs. So that's the Pacific Islands. Hopefully you learned a little bit more about the different cultures and religions of these areas in the different Pacific Islands, and hopefully you enjoyed it. But now I encourage you to go answer your questions in your video assignments and let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.